model of 5 vector equilibrium. So it turns out if you're interested in vector equilibrium as a geometric state, you have to start thinking about 5 simultaneously. That if you don't start with platonic solids, but if you start with a 30 Verdi, which to me is a natural place to start because it's the 6 great circles, then you're automatically in the world of compound 5. So instead of having a chart like that of polyhedra of compound 5 and then having a chart of that of polyhedra, there's a way of integrating those two worlds. And it turns out that the compound world is the more primary world. So if you've had experience with vector equilibrium, you'll find that it's not more difficult to think about 5 vector equilibriums. And so...
What do you mean by 5?
That's what this is. This represents, let's take the blue Velcro ones.
Okay.
See, there's the squares.
Uh-huh.
So if I pick any one of these different elements,
Right.
I've got 5 vector coming around a central.
Okay, so that's a 30 Verdi.
This is the next step in the 30 Verdi. The 30 Verdi is working with decagons. If you notice, we have a pure 30 Verdi. Each great circle is a decagonal circle. It breaks up into those 10 points. Once you've gone and generated the next level, I call it generation. You can see on the page, on the last page, is sort of a summary. It's generating structures with emerging vertices and polyhedra. So you started off with a 30 Verdi from 6 great circles. So that's generation 1. The 6 great circles are essentially the beginnings, and connecting those vertices gave you a 30 Verdi. Then you went to the next nearest neighbor of a 30 Verdi, which means you skipped its nearest neighbor, which is a 30 Verdi, and gone to its next nearest neighbor, and that one gave you the pentagram within each one of the pentagons. So and I call that a star 30 Verdi, because now you have because classically a star dodecahedron, a regular dodecahedron with the pentagons in its face is called a star dodecahedron. So I've taken on calling this a star 30 Verdi, and you've created 10 great circles, 10 more great circles. You had 6 great circles. Now this first generation has taken you, the second generation has taken you to 10 great circles, and now you've gone from decagons as being significant to hexagons as being significant. So this is the progression you're going to find. It's going to go from
hexagon in the great circle.
In the great circle. If you follow across, once you made this, those are the great circles. Those are the circles, 10 great circles, and they are hexagonal. But because it's broken up into the golden ratio, if you skip 2 neighbors, you would get a hexagon within the hexagon. In fact, you'd get 2 hexagons. You can picture. You picture a hexagon, and the great circles break it up, and so you start connecting every second one.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's it.
So this one would create another hexagon within the hexagon.
That's right. That's right. So for 5 great circles, if one great circle, if one vector equilibrium represents 4 great circles of hexagons, you're going to have to find 20 hexagons. Well, the 10 large hexagons, each one will give you 2 hexagons, and that'll give you the 20 great circles that you need. So that is it. Is that clear? It's a very important point. Bucky never took us quite to that point, even though 10 great circles was important to his work. The idea that you're not talking about 1 vector equilibrium, but 5. And the
Does that mean that a 90 Verdi has 20 great circles? Is that what you're saying?
A 90 Verdi has 10 plus 6.
Okay.
It has the original 6 great circles, and then you've built 10 more. Okay. Well, 15. 15 is the next one we're heading for. So you see, now going to generation 3, I've taken that with this model that we've managed to cannibalize. We're lucky we have anything. Can someone move? Can someone move all these? Not the. Yeah, this one. Hold on. So if you're generating, see, this whole geometry is based on generation. You set your computer. You start with a 30 verti, and you follow what I call Rule 1. You can look at that on the second page. Lines connect vertices, and new vertices emerge from the intersection of lines. So you start with a pentagon, and the rule is that you go to the next possible connection, and then before you know it, Rule 1 gives you 5 more vertices. And that's what we've done. And that's what we've done for each one of the 12 pentagons there. So, and that's the whole system. So then the computer then looks for the next possible combination, and the next possible combination comes when you're going from one corner to another corner, and before you know it, where's the tricontahedron? That big red tricontahedron? Did we?
Got it over there.
There's a big red tricontahedron. Maybe we took it apart because we needed the pieces.
Well, you can use this one.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. So by going to the next generation, you've now created this internal structure, and it turns out that this, I took it out so you would see it, represents the blue sticks, and then you start connecting the blue sticks, which is the generation after that. So you have the tricon. The long diagonals become an icosahedron. See the triangles from the long diagonals? The short diagonals become a decahedron, pentanal dodecahedron. And it turns out that that the new centers that you create from it are the 30 centers of a new 30 verti. So these are dual structures of one another, and as you pointed out, the thing can implode into as it gets smaller and smaller. So this all, you see, generated itself. I didn't have to invent anything. All you had to do is start at the right place. But if you start with the platonic solids, you see, the most you can do is truncate them and slice them and end up with a chart like that, which has everything individualized. So there's really, so this has been going on for thousands of years now. Who said that we suffer from hardening of the, what was your expression, Roger?
Hardening of the categories.
We suffer from hardening of the categories. Well, the platonic solids is a category that's hardened us, because nature is much richer than the platonic solids, and if you can get away from 2,000 years of him breeding with that, you'll end up in the world of compound fives being part of it. In addition to that, all sorts of things that come up which are quite unpredictable. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just say it again in another way. I mean,
A compound 5, it's 5 polyhedra around a common center. So the compound 5 cube is well known. If you just take a dodecahedron, a regular dodecahedron, and connect its opposite neighbors, you'll get a pentagon inside of each one of the 12 faces, and that would be 5 cubes, each one of those. So, and that's been known and appreciated. It's just never fit into anything. So it really happens very easily. I would have built, if we had the time, I would have built that. It's a wonderful thing to. I did it at the Philomorphs a few years ago, where everybody built a pentagram, and they all came together, and there was a dodecahedron, and there were the 5 cubes magically come out. So you can do that. Okay, this model here that Tom has worked so diligently at.
And John.
And John. is the same process. Tim, I asked him to do the great circle. I asked him to do the 30 verti in a color coordination, and it turns out, I'll just take the blue. You'll find that there are 6 colors, 6 balls of the same color in an XYZ coordinate system, what we've been calling orthogonal. But it turns out with a 30 verti, there are 5 orthogonal systems to play with. And so just the idea that we're limiting ourselves to one orthogonal system and having a whole mathematic based on one XYZ coordinate system, again, is a poverty of thinking. And so what happens when you start connecting the color coordinated ones and you start connecting the 6 of one color, you get an octahedron. So we created a model of 5 octahedra. Common center, and there's one nice model of it. And if you look at that model, you'd say, gee, I wonder what the shape of all those points are. Well, it turns out those points are pentagons and triangles. They are the points of your 30 verti. So 5 octahedra just naturally emerge from 30 verti. You can't help but get over. So everything that's in 3/4 symmetry turns out to be 5s, compound 5s. That includes the cubes, of course, and once you have that, that means you've got the tetrahedrons. So there are always compound 5 tetrahedrons around the common center. So we really, for Synergetics 3, we have this under our belt now of what the richness of a vector equilibrium is in an isometric vector matrix. Well, it turns out if you have 5 of them, there's a richness that's not difficult to understand because there's a certain completeness to it. So there's your 5. So and last but not least is the rhombic dodecahedron. Where is the one that? Oh, that right there. Larry and crew worked. So Bucky has, really talked a lot about the rhombic dodecahedron, and here it is within the 30 verti. You just have to set up a place where the 3-fold symmetry points meet, and you do that by any one of these previous steps, and then you start connecting a 3-fold symmetry with a 30 verti symmetry, and you see there's your. It hasn't been quite completed, has it? But there is a you can begin to see one diamond face, or a few diamond faces. Now, in this model, has all 5 rhombic dodecahedra. And what's also interesting, that instead of seeing, you see the one with the great rhombi icosidodeca with the triangles and squares and pentagons on the bottom. It's on the lower one, next to the icosidodeca. Well, that's the way that shape has been conceived. But in reality, if you have 5, this one? Okay. Okay, yep, that's a good idea. Okay. Once you have your 5 rhombic dodecahedra, they automatically form new nodal points on the 4th generation or 5th generation. You start connecting those and you get triangles, pentagons, and squares, and you've created that object which seems unrelated, but here it is. It just pops right out in a natural part of a compound 5 structure. The same is true of an enneacontahedron. An enneacontahedron has 90 faces. Well, it pops right out of 5 rhombic dodecahedra. I didn't have to do a thing except once the new struts are all in there, I would have my 90 faces, 30 skinny diamonds and 60 of the fat ones. So a whole different world kind of emerges once you get used to thinking about 30 verti as the beginning of geometry. Now, I've worked out a precursor of 30 verti, which we won't go into, because the 30 Verdi really represents, as you notice, it's a completely blue model with rectangular sticks to represent two-fold symmetry. The red ones are three-fold symmetry. The yellow, there's 3- and 5-fold symmetries. But it turns out that the blue sticks are really the foundation of the whole thing. I can always replace the red sticks with a combination of blue sticks. So the blue sticks are just a shortcut or an abstraction. So in reality, we could build a whole system just based on the two-fold symmetry of the blue sticks, which makes two-fold symmetry quite primary. And it turns out, one day when I gave a talk years ago about two-fold symmetry, and I reduced all the geometries down to two-fold symmetry, somebody said, what about one-fold symmetry? Well, nobody ever heard of one-fold symmetry, but it turns out there is a geometry to one-fold symmetry, and that's the precursor to this, which we won't go into. That's a whole other discussion. But I just want to know that there's nothing arbitrary about making 6 great circles the beginning of your geometry. It has a rightful evolved state. And in fact, in the physics of geometry, to me, the 30 Verdi represents the basic wave model. If you say, what is the shape of a wave? To me, it's a 30 Verdi. And when it dualizes from a wave to a photon, because the 30 Verdi itself, I won't go into physics very much, but it doesn't contain space. To me, you have to have parallel energetics in order to confine space. So, yeah, no, I want this one. So what Hoberman has done, he's found out what a wonderful shape the 30 Verdi is and made it into his most popular toy. And of course, he had to make the joints, because there are 30 joints, he had to make the joints in the shape of a tricontahedron. What happens so if this is a wave, and if we put all these 30 Verdis that you built in a line, to me it would be a wave transmission, which in string theory would be open strings. And in string theory, you have to close these things up so that they start becoming localized. Well, look what happens when the wave front collapses. You can begin to see the vertices, which are almost unimportant at this size. Once the size gets smaller and smaller, the vertices start dominating, you see. And now you have a tricontahedron in the center. All those 30, and you can actually feel the solidity of that. So, to me, in my physics of geometry, this is the wave. It travels as an open wave. When it reaches your computer or your eye, there's a collapse of it, and it becomes the material, what we've been calling material, the localized photon.
We said the characteristic of a tricontahedron with its parallel sides, for the first time, can contain volume when it's an icontododeca, it cannot. There are no parallel.
Right. Gene's bringing up a good point, because Bucky talks about series and parallel circuits. It turns out that the 30 Verdi is what you would call series circuitry, like Christmas tree lights are in series circuitry. But in order to contain space, you need to create parallel circuitry, series in parallel, and that's why the rhombic diamonds become essential to it. So someone asked me, what's the volume of a 30 Verdi? To me, there is no volume to a 30 Verdi. It's just 6 great circles. It's only when it becomes a tricontahedron with real faces, electromagnetic faces, that you can call it as having a volume. So structures that have triangles and pentagons never give you a volume because they're just open. But once it transforms into diamonds, and what happens, the angularities stay the same, because these are decagons, and so the basic angle of sixth grade circle is 120 degrees. So nature, which is a flat angle, so nature has to figure out, well, how do I turn this flat two-dimensional angle into a three-dimensional angle, a dihedral angle? Well, that transformation does that because it turns out that the dihedral angle of the faces of one another are 120 degrees. So,
Of the Icasa dodecahedron or the triconchadron?
of the triconta. The 120 degrees remained, but it's a two-dimensional angularity in the Icasi dodeca, and it becomes a three-dimensional reality in the tricontahedron. Now, this is true with vector equilibrium too. You can see that almost as a wave, and because its great circle is at 120 degrees, when it transforms into a rhombic structure, it dualizes into the rhombic dodecahedron, which again has dihedral angles of 120 degrees. It's true. It's true of the three great circles of the octahedron. In a sense, to me, there are no real faces there. These are all electromagnetic circuits. But when these three great circles of squares become the dihedral angles of a cube, you've maintained the 90 degrees, but you've now gone to the duality of the octahedron and the cube. So these are all dualities which geometry explains very well, and physics has a difficult time accepting. You know, it's always the great mystery of duality in physics today. But with a lot more modeling, it turns out that the geometers know a lot about duality. And this is a good example of that. So now we've gone from 90 degrees, two dimensions, to 90 degrees cube. We've gone from 120 degrees to 120 degrees of the dodecahedron, and we've gone from 144 degrees of the sixth grade circle, of the decagon, to 144 degrees of the tricon. So it's always that transformation of angularity that Bucky likes to talk about, and it seems to work out very, very well in all three faces.
Do you think that the nature of things building themselves could be interpreted as the intelligence in design?
Yeah, but like you said, everything is so intelligence is built into the system, isn't it? Yeah, intelligence.
So there's really no problem with
There's no problem,
thinking
yeah.
about intelligence.
No.
It starts complex and you make it simple. I mean, in consciousness, you distill out the simplicity.
Yeah,
But it's all the one thing.
yeah, yeah. I would agree with that.
So that there shouldn't be any real problem about
Yeah.
this evolution, in intelligent design. Intelligent design doesn't mean God.
That's
I mean,
right.
in the way that people think
That's
about
right.
it.
That's
So if we could explain this to the public,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
religious arguments
Yeah.
would disappear.
And if we saw the richness of geometry, for example, once you get into that world of the richness of space, now you're just not talking about cubes in space. You're talking about all this compound stuff, and space turns out to be so rich, riches beyond our greatest
Which is
dream.
probably really just consciousness because it's all only ideas in
Yeah.
the end, right?
Maybe.
Thoughts before things.
Say what?
So if there's anybody out there who has computer skills, we could do this very nicely on a computer. Even though we really have five orthogonal matrices, for years I thought this is going to be a problem. How do you have a system that has embedded in it five orthogonal matrices into one XYZ coordinate system? I thought we'd need a new coordinate system to account for that. It what?
You want to graph it? You want to draw it?
I want it. Yeah, I want it to be,
Mathematica can probably do it.
to make the models actually.
I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
probably
So Marvin, if you talk about the duality of the Icasa dodeca, Verdi, and the triconchadron,
Yeah.
and you use the Icasa dodeca to symbolize the wave and the triconchadron to symbolize the photon,
Right.
then are you saying that they're reversible? That one can go from the wave to the particle and from the particle back to the wave.
Yeah. So if you have to do any traveling, you do it as an open wave system. When you arrive, everything happens locally. It's like email. You don't want to compare it to sending a letter.
Return to sender.
You want instant traveling as an open system. When it arrives at your computer, it reconfigures into, and that's what photons do when they hit your eye. And the geometry really seems quite easy to do. So I mean, because it happens so much, you would think nature would find the easiest possible way of doing it. And so to me, all this stuff can be modeled.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, now let's get a little deconstruction in now.